Welcome back to Big Brave Business. I'm your host, Sarah K. Heater. Big Brave Business is a podcast where we challenge the status quo of traditional business practices. So if you're ready to challenge norms, rewrite the rules, and redefine what it means to lead with courage and integrity, then grab a notebook and let's dive in. Welcome back to Big Brave Business. I have another guest today, a local friend. We met recently online and we actually live really close together physically. We haven't met in person yet though, which is funny.
We should do that.
Yeah, but welcome to the podcast, Dee Ntšala. Dee is a leadership and performance improvement coach with a passion for holistic personal and professional development. As the founder of Nova Conxulting, she integrates wellness, nervous system regulation, and innovative thinking to help individuals and teams thrive. With a background in organizational development and a love for human design and biohacking, Dee is committed to fostering inclusive, purpose-driven careers and communities. Welcome to the podcast.
That was a lot.
Yeah, that's you.
I know. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I do those things.
Yeah, I love that about bios because it's always you gave it to me, but it's at the same time when you hear somebody say it back, you're like, oh, that is me.
I know, but and also it's like, why am I surprised by any of this?
Yeah.
Literally,
So,
you're like, so relaxed.
I'm excited to chat with you. I think from our original conversation and then obviously just chatting about what we were going to talk about today, there's just a lot of directions this could go. I'm interested to see where it goes, but we wanted to lead off with a conversation about self-care. And I say this with an asterisk. If you listened to last week's episode with Dr. Sherry, I mentioned on there that every podcast about empowerment or wellness or business or whatever ever has like a burnout and self-care conversation. And I feel like we say a lot of the same things, don't necessarily make a lot of progress, don't necessarily have anything new to learn or say. And last week we talked about some really interesting stuff related to more the burnout side and how we're perpetuating burnout among our team. But Dee and I thought it would be cool to talk a little bit more about the self-care part. And especially because you mentioned you were inspired by a conversation you had earlier where you learned some staggering stuff. Do you want to share about that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I just recently learned that the rate of suicide amongst founders specifically is concerningly high, right? And I don't want to misquote the person that gave me. I think it was like in the 50s, like high 50s, almost 60%. That is scary. And knowing that, and then coupling it with my own personal experience in corporate and from conversations that I've had with other corporate leaders, whether they were coaching clients or people that I met at events, I know for a fact that mental health is something that is not often spoken about at work. If anything, when you start advocating for things around mental health, at times it can be seen as a shortcoming of some sort, or as though it's like a weakness, right? Oh, you like this fragile little snowflake that needs all this extra attention. No. Your responsibility as an individual, forget your title. I'm a firm believer that we are all responsible for ourselves first. And part of that responsibility is making sure that you are physically, mentally, emotionally well. Because if all those three things aren't working in harmony with each other to keep your machine going, at some point you're going to run into a problem. And the thing about our bodies is if we don't take the hints to slow down, eventually it'll shut down on us and it'll force us to slow down whether we want to or not. And that's something that I would like to help people bypass as much as possible. Just maybe circumvent that, reduce that risk for yourself and for your team, especially if you're a leader. Because remember, when you're a leader, it's not just about you anymore. You now have a group of other humans that are responsible to you and that you're responsible to and for. So if you're taking care of yourself, it only just makes sense to bring your team along because they're a part of your team.
Yeah. So really quickly, I just looked up a statistic so that we could have a source, assuming that when this comes out, that this link is still public on the internet. I will gladly link to this, but I'm looking at a report on entrepreneur.com and they have a quote here I'm going to read that says, according to Dr. Michael Freeman, one of the only well-established physicians to conduct research in this area, a startling 72% of entrepreneurs report having mental health concerns. And while there is no reliable data or studies on specifically suicide rates or suicidal ideation among entrepreneurs. Some have suggested that founders are 2 times more likely to have suicidal thoughts. And this article on entrepreneur.com goes on to say, if you were predisposed to any deadly disease at a rate that much higher than the rest of the population, you'd pay attention. So this is something we need to talk more about among entrepreneurs. I'm definitely going to link to this article so that if you want to do further reading on this, you can. But I am so fascinated by this and you bringing this to my attention because it's something I definitely have never taken notice of or thought about.
Think about it too, right? Your mental health also depends on your perception of the support that you have. And I'm going to have to see where I pull these numbers from. I'm pretty sure I had to pull up a slide that I had presented a couple of weeks ago. But 8 out of 10 founders experience high levels of loneliness.
Yeah.
Entrepreneurship can get really lonely because you get isolated, right? It's not like you're working in a big office around you. So think about 8 out of 10 people experience loneliness that are in the entrepreneurial space. And if our mental health and our mental stability depends on our perception of support, if you are feeling alone, it is very easy to feel as though that you don't have any support.
Yeah. That's a
It's
huge
a very
part
quick
of
way to spiral.
that's a huge part of why Amanda and I started this podcast originally. And so if you're new here and you're like, who the hell? Amanda was my co-host for season 1 and
Yeah.
she decided to step away for season 2, which is when I started bringing in guests. And when we started this podcast, the whole premise was like, we longed for business besties. We heard people talk about it. We both felt very lonely. We both felt very isolated. And seeing other people talk about business besties or whatever online gave us so much fucking FOMO. Like, just absolutely craved having that connection with somebody on a deep level who gets the entrepreneurship thing. And when we found each other, it was such a relief to have that. And we wanted to create a space where whoever's listening, whoever's drawn to our same kind of energy and the same kind of discussions, hopefully whoever's listening could feel like they are part of this business friendship, that you have business besties to really talk about like the real stuff about running a business. And that's what our whole goal was with this podcast. And I think it's made even better by now in season 2 getting to have guests come on, because having these conversations and building this community where we're getting right into big stuff like this, let's talk about the real stuff. I just think that's really healthy for me, and it's one of the reasons why I'm not willing to give the podcast up even when it's not like a direct funnel to my business or whatever, and why I think it's so important and helpful and valuable. So I think that loneliness is such a big part of it. Yes, I think you're very isolated. You're going it alone. You're the one who's responsible. It's a lot of pressure for success as well on your shoulders and on your shoulders alone. And that, yeah, that's a lot to carry.
100%. It's a lot to carry. And then add on to that a lot of times when people do decide to step into the entrepreneurial space, the people around them often don't understand or see the value in doing it. So not only do you have to battle the loneliness and isolation of just being an entrepreneur to begin with, you also now have to manage these relationships while defending this decision that you've made. It can take a lot out of people.
And it's both, right? Because the people who are around you that are in your personal network, those are people who love you, but they don't get this part of you. And this is a huge part of you. And the people who are around you in the professional side, who are your clients, your prospects, your consultants, people you're consulting, however, these are professional connections. They're not personal connections. And being able to have that personal intimacy and vulnerability and connection, that deep, real, authentic connection that feeds your soul and makes you human, that is missing.
And what sometimes people tend to overlook or really take for granted is even if you do go to networking events and you do go to like masterminds, is there a chance that you'll be able to develop meaningful, authentic relationships and friendships through those connections? Absolutely. But there's also this general sense that when you are going to networking events, everyone around you, especially if they're doing the same thing as you're doing, are immediately labeled as competition. And when you label someone as competition, how do you foster a relationship where you can be vulnerable about your fears about your business and things that you're concerned about, things that you're struggling with? Because now you feel like, oh, I'm making myself vulnerable to the competition. So there's a mindset shift that I really would love to see with entrepreneurs of the future, current and just going forward, where one, we understand that scarcity is a myth. There are billions of people in the world. There is more than enough room under the sun for all of us. And if you can find people that are also looking for people that are looking for meaningful connections that go beyond just, oh, here's a quick productivity tip, right? Like friends that you can call and say, oh my God, I had a bad day in my business today. Let me just hear what happened. And they can show up for you and give you advice and hold space for you. If you can attract those people and become that person for others, I feel like if we approach our connections from that perspective, when we are looking to have business besties, a lot less people will feel alone in their entrepreneurial journey.
This is so interesting to me. And I'm just because I have that entrepreneur.com article up, one of the other
Yeah.
things they mentioned too is that founders are action takers. They don't just think, they act, they ideate, and then they build, they put thoughts into motion. So this article says giving voice to suicidal thoughts scares entrepreneurs because it makes dark ideas seem real, especially given the tendency to act readily to make ideations into realities. That is wild. And also they go on to talk about, like, in this article, when entrepreneurs are problem solvers, they're solving problems all day, every day. And so, what happens when somebody who is that motivated by solving problems encounters an unsolvable problem? And what are the consequences of admitting that a problem is unsolvable? What is the perception of like weakness if
Yeah.
or failure? And all of this is just clicking for me. It's just making so much sense of, yeah. And I'm not going to list them, but there is in this article a lot of references to famous founders who you may have heard of. You definitely have heard of some people on this list who have taken their lives. And that does make me realize the correlation that I had never put together. This is interesting and also terrifying. So I think like the big question then becomes like, how do we take care of ourselves to prevent it? And I think community is a big part of what we've talked about, right? Being able to find authentic connections with other humans that help us have a supportive place where we can share the highs and the lows, and where we can problem solve with other people, and where we can ideate and explore those things safely of whatever's going on in our life or our business, and with people who get it. So I think that's definitely, community is definitely a big part of it. What are some other things that we could be doing?
Where do we start? How I look at it, I think if human beings are islands, we are more like an archipelago, right? It's very easy for you to think that you're an island by yourself, but understand that there are like dozens other islands around you. So seek out connection, and seek out connection outside of, oh, this is a business thing. No, you are a human being. So you, the human, needs to have other people that you're connected to in some ways, and separate your business from yourself. I think I know before the entrepreneurs roll their eyes at me, I'm right there with you. I get it. Your business becomes a huge part of who you are. But if you do not develop a sense of self outside of you being a founder, CEO, whatever, it is very easy to fall into the trap of being so enmeshed with your business that you forget that there is a human driving this business. So separate your personality from your job or your business, because it is what
Yeah.
you do, not who you are. So the same way that you seek out connections for what you do, you need to find connections for who you are. These can be family, friends, a therapist, whatever, co-working group. There's so many options here. Seek out people that just speak to you as a person versus a person that does X or that owns X. That's number one. Separate those two things and then build connections for both, because they're both big parts of your lives, right? We become business owners because we have a passion for something or want to create some sort of value in the world. It's beautiful that we want to do that. But if we, as the individual that's driving this thing, are not taking care of ourselves, it then jeopardizes this very thing that you did all this work for. So please just separate your identities for a second. It's okay.
Yeah.
Your business is what you do, it's not who you are. And I think that also helps when the business isn't doing so well. Suddenly, it's very
Yeah.
easy if your business isn't doing well to go, oh my God, I'm not doing well. No, babe, it's just your business that's not doing well. You are still you. You are still smart, and you can still come up with ways to fix whatever's happening.
I am just feeling really personally called out at that because I am, if you are into the Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 3. I'm completely driven by my accomplishments, and especially when that comes to work. And I've talked about this on the podcast before. In fact, Amanda and I used to joke about making it a drinking game, take a drink every time Sarah mentions she's an Enneagram 3. But this came up for me a lot in my corporate life because my corporate life ended when I got laid off.
Yeah.
And experiencing a layoff for anybody is trauma, but definitely with my personality type of being an Enneagram 3 and being driven by my accomplishments, equating my worth to being laid off is something that I really struggled with. And so that's what my personal grief looked like in that. And I think it's interesting then to really reflect on, yeah, if my business quote unquote failed or went under or whatever happened, if there's a hard day or a hard month, to say the words, "No, babe, that's not you. That's just your business,"
Isn't
is
it?
like, oh shit. Like, I actually think I would struggle in those moments to be able to really hear that. So that's very interesting and true. And I think establishing identity outside of your business is such a fascinating thing. So, like having other relationships that are not business related, having hobbies, having, and I talk on this podcast, I've talked with other people about rest and play. And I think
Yes.
that those things come back up here because it is like such a reminder that you are a whole being and not just work. Yeah.
Right. And the thing about having those connections outside of work is that, and I'm sure you've experienced this, and I'm also talking from my own experience as well. It's the people outside of your business that just see you as a person that pour so much into you during those hard times and without even knowing it, right? Because you're just meeting with your friends to have coffee after a rough day. And then you look around, you're like, you know what? I'm sorry about beautiful humans. My life's not that bad. I'm gonna take a nap and try this business thing again tomorrow. I'm gonna give it another go. I've definitely had those moments where I was like, wait, things aren't going according to plan. But now because I'm here, I'm able to separate, okay, it's not that I am failing, it's that I am trying things and collecting data that it's not working. So how about we just step away from this for a second? The business is fine. It's registered. It has a whole IEN number. The tax ID is the social security number. Just leave it alone over there in the corner. Retract, go back into your regular world. And once you have that moment of you're no longer under pressure, suddenly your nervous system is regulated. Guess what happens when your nervous system is regulated and you're calm? You start coming up with the best ideas on how to fix your problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's
But
where
if
I think rest and play can really come as two things that can help with that is it gives you that reset and it helps make your creativity and your problem solving so much more effective. That makes total sense. What are some other ways, if your nervous system is activated, like what are some other ways we regulate that? I know there's a lot of like chatter online about nervous system stuff these days. And you mentioned in your bio that's something you love. So I'm curious from your perspective.
obsessed, the funny thing about nervous system regulation is all it really needs is your time and your breath. Two things that are accessible to anybody everywhere all the time. So just for those that are watching or listening in, when you are in a fight or flight mode, your nervous system is in the sympathetic, is your sympathetic nervous system is activated. So that gets your heart rate going so you can run or fight off whatever danger you're in. What to regulate your nervous system, you want to manually bring yourself back. Understand that these things happen automatically without our intervention every day, all the time. But now with this work of nervous system regulation, we now know, and it's widely available online, you can understand how this works. But we can actually manually bring ourselves into the parasympathetic nervous system and activate that so that we are in like a state of rest. Your parasympathetic nervous system is what's active when you are resting, when you're eating, when you're sleeping. That's just what's keeping you alive and having you calm and chilled out. So my favorite things to do sometimes, not sometimes, all the time really, is using breath work and grounding exercises. So if you find yourself triggered, meaning that your heartbeat's racing, your nervous system is just shot, right? You can't even make out a single thought properly. Just bring yourself to your breath. That grounds you. Meditation works. It's one of those things that helps as well, right? So breath work, meditation, for me, I like to blend those two things. Box breathing is a big one. Navy SEALs use it, so you can trust it. And basically with box breathing is you just sit in a comfortable space. It takes about 4 or 5 minutes really to help calm you down. And I like to I like to visualize. So I'll visualize a little dot going up when I inhale for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4 going across, exhale for a count of 4, hold it for a count of 4, and just keep doing that. I like doing the visualization because it stops it gives your brain a distraction, right? When your nervous system is shot or when you are dysregulated, your mind is racing. What we want to do is calm your mind down, bring you back to your breath. So doing the visualization with the breathing helps do those two things. Another thing that people sometimes will use for grounding exercise is identify things that you can feel, taste, touch, smell. Those are the 5 senses, right? Did I miss something? I'm like, wait, did I mention all the 5 senses? I don't know. I think so. So doing that, going outside, people don't sometimes appreciate just being in nature. Find time in your day to go outside. Find time in your weekly activities to just be outside in nature for a couple of hours or an hour if you can. There is so much that comes from just being outside that just helps you remember that you're a person, that you're alive, and not just a drone working on something. But yeah, those are the tips that I have. And another thing too with nervous system regulation, I don't know why I'm thinking about this tweet right now, but I feel the need to share it. I think sometimes when people think about a regulated nervous system, it means, oh, you're not reacting. You are responding to your environment versus reacting to it. Those are two very different things. When you are reactive, it is something triggers your reaction. So there's little thoughts, little intention behind what happens after that. But when your nervous system is regulated, you are able to respond to your environment. So it means that there is intention, there is thought, there is purpose behind what the next thing you do is. And that's what we want to do. We want to get to a point where things can happen around us. And instead of being easily reactive, we are more empowered to then respond appropriately to our environment. So having a regulated nervous system doesn't just mean nothing phases you. If nothing phases you, I'm sorry, you're dead. It's because you're not a human being. No, things will phase you, right? Things are going to happen, whether they're in your control or out of your control, but you're a human being that's experiencing things around them all the time. That's fine. We want to just get to a point where we are intentionally responding versus reacting.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that quick crash course that you just gave us in just learning a little bit about your nervous system, because I really feel like you covered so much there in a pretty succinct way. And there really is so much to be learned about this. And there's a lot of information out there. And I think there are people who do entire podcasts all about this
Sure.
topic. So I think that was a really succinct way to summarize a lot of the information.
I would be terrible at my job if I did not know how to do that. No, but seriously, I think learning about the anatomic nervous system, which is like our nervous system as a whole, is something that you don't have to know the ins and outs of it to know what parts you need to be able to understand to help yourself. And that's what I want to
Yeah.
offer you guys listening in. Just understand there's 3 whole parts to the anatomic nervous system. We're only going to focus on these 2 because they're the ones that regulate our heart rate and our energy levels. I'm really simplifying this, right? So these are the 2 parts. When you are panicked, you're in the sympathetic. When you're rested, you're in the parasympathetic. And don't even worry about the words. Just focus on how you're feeling. Forget the names of these things. Focus on how you're feeling in your body, right? If you feel your heart rate is racing, your thoughts are racing, that is your body saying, hey, I'm panicking here. I don't feel safe. Help. So when you feel that, find a way to remind yourself, oh, okay, hold on. This is my invitation to stop, to breathe, to have awareness, and then make a decision on how to move forward.
Yeah.
Unless you lion chasing you, there's no need to react from your triggered self. Really, there isn't. Lion, bear, maybe dog, but there's no need for you to do that. It's just in regular conversation, in regular life, when you're not in danger. When you are in danger, trust your instincts. Yes, please move instinctively. Don't worry unless you have another agenda. But if your agenda is to keep yourself safe, trust those instincts and do what you have to do when you're in danger. But how often are we really in danger every day in life?
And that is what I was thinking earlier. This is what I think is so important in this conversation, is that we tend to separate mind and body, that like what's happening in our brain and what's happening to us physically are two different things, when
Yeah.
really there's such a link between what's happening in our brain and then what happens to us physically. And there's such a relationship. And I think that understanding, like, if you're interested, taking the time to study like anatomically what's going on can be helpful. But even if that's not interesting to you, or if you don't really have the capacity for that or interest or whatever, I think that just knowing that is true, that it's not just about mindset work. It's not just about, you can't coach yourself through being cornered by a tiger, right? There's things that your body having a physical reaction to, that stress, fear, anxiety, depression, etc., that comes from everyday life, that comes from daily experiences, that comes from life experiences, that's going to happen in interpersonal, as a result of interpersonal relationships or external forces beyond your control in your immediate environment or in an unusual environment, etc. Like, that's going to have a physical effect. And I think taking notice, even if you don't know, to your point about all the kind of scientific terms and this and that, there are things you can take stock of and take notice of. How are you doing? Like, how are you sleeping? Are you getting enough sleep? Is it good sleep? Is it restful sleep? Do you wake up feeling rested? Or do you wake up feeling tired? Are you tired all the time? Are you relying on caffeine and other substances to get you enough energy to get through the day? Or are you a rested, alert person? Are you eating well? Are you hydrating? Are you hungry all the time? Or are you not actively not hungry all the time? These are all indicators of what is happening physically. And that's
Yeah.
probably partially a result of what's going on with your brain chemistry and in your nervous system. I think too, one that really surprised me recently personally was like my ability to focus. Now, of course, there's like diagnosable things that you could medicate to help her, but even that, even medicated with a diagnosable condition as to why ADD or ADHD, of why you may have trouble focusing, those things can still be triggered more by certain circumstances or stimuli. So being able to take stock of what am I experiencing physically? What is happening? And then we can explore what are some ways I can take care of those things.
And I think too, and thank you so much for sharing what you said right now, because it rang so true. It is harder for me to manage my ADHD symptoms when I'm stressed. So for me, stress management it's critical. I can't just skip out on it. You know what I mean? Like, it's critical. And it's from understanding how much learning about this stuff for myself has helped me. And then because I was learning it to then help others and then having to learn about it, I was like, oh, so this isn't just an anecdotal thing that I experienced, because I do have a very woo-woo side of me. And I'm also very corporate, and I've managed to blend those two things into this one being. So there are things that I have tried that I didn't do for work, but I was just doing for myself. And I was like, oh, wait, okay, so this makes sense. Let me learn more about this so that I can work it into my work, because I know that it works.
And I like that you said earlier too, things are going to affect you. So stress management doesn't mean avoiding stressful situations. Stressful
Oh,
situations are going to happen to you. Traffic is going to happen. Altercations with people you love are going to happen. Stress and tension and negative client experiences and having a cavity and whatever, the millions
life
of
is
things
gonna
that could,
go whatever.
life is going to stress you out. So then stress management actually looks like looking at how your stress is affecting your physical body and then taking care of your physical body needs. So what do we need to do to help you get good sleep? What does that mean taking time off? Does that mean going away, either a staycation just to change your surroundings
Yeah.
or to actually physically take a trip like further away? Does it mean you need a really good quality meal? Does it mean you need time in nature, like you mentioned? Does you need sunshine? Do you need vitamins? Do you need what is it that your body needs to be nourished? If you're a plant, how would you take care of yourself in this moment?
Light, water, food. No, but on a serious note, too, as much advice as there is out there, what I also encourage people to do is treat yourself like an experiment. Everyone's needs are not all going to be the same.
Yeah.
Everyone gets joy from different things. There are certain things that we can say, okay, just because you're a human being and you have this need to breathe air, we can say everyone needs to know how to breathe. And if you get time to breathe in some fresh air, even better. Higher quality air, amazing. We love that for you. Keep doing it. Stay strong. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everyone can sit down and meditate for an hour every day. That's not
Yeah.
a reality for a lot of people. So if
Mhm.
you can't meditate for an hour, does that look like maybe breaking up your meditation into 15-minute chunks here and there throughout the day? Does it look like maybe instead of sitting down lotus flower style with your eyes closed, chanting Om, does meditation more look like when you're taking a walk, just being completely present in that moment and just soaking up that moment and just being present?
Taking a walk came to my mind as well. Yes.
There are so many ways to
Working
encourage.
with your hands, painting, cooking,
Exactly.
baking, like there's so many things that can appeal to different people. You're spot on about that. I love that.
100%. So treat yourself like an experiment. I know that for a lot of people, we have normalized stress as human beings. And I think in the US, it's actually
We
way up
wear it
there,
like a
right?
badge of honor to a certain
Oh,
extent.
100%. Like the ability to be stressed and still function, regardless of how well you're functioning. Because
If you're
and
not
also,
stressed, you're not doing enough or you're not, yeah.
oh, yeah, 100%. We've created this environment where people have normalized being stressed. Chronic stress will kill you. It's well documented, right? There's tons of research papers out there that like the higher people go up the corporate ladder, especially with men, the rates and risks for heart attacks skyrocket, right? So understand that you are a human being and you have to take care of your human body to be able to show up and be all the other things that you're supposed to be. And I reject the notion that we have to sacrifice family and friends to be successful in business. No, thank you. I'd rather not. And we also have to rethink how we measure and view success. I would love for us to get to the point where we actually sit down as individuals and say, hey, self, this is my life right now. This is the life that I want. How do I get there in a way that doesn't have me neglecting myself or the people that need me, or not necessarily, or the people that can help me come back to myself when I forget myself? Those people are very important.
Yeah.
Those relationships that are just there to remind you of who you are outside of your label, outside of your accomplishments, because every single one of us is worthy of love and adoration by virtue of just being here. You don't have to work to be loved. The right people will not expect anything of you, but just you just showing up to love you.
Yep.
Love isn't earned. Worth isn't earned. You're a human. You're a human being. Do you know how many little cells had to come together to create you? That is how amazing you are. A whole bunch of random cells decided to come together. Yeah, human. Let's go. So that in and of itself is amazing.
Yeah.
Celebrate that. Yes, it's good to have accomplishments. It's good to have things that you're striving for, but don't neglect the vehicle that's allowing you to do those things. And we oftentimes do that.
Yeah. So I have one more question for you that I like to end
Yeah.
all of these conversations with. But before I get into that, I want to go ahead and just make a little disclaimer to the person listening. I think a lot of times when the topic of like mental health and especially suicide comes up, there's a lot of fear that talking about it will make it more real or it will make it more of a problem. And I want to make sure to shout out something that I in the context of my Girl Scout Troop Leader podcast that I host, separate from this one, I had a wonderful guest on named Susie Freeman, who maybe I can get her to come on here as well. She actually provides training for suicide awareness and prevention, especially in teens. So we did a bunch of certification training for troop leaders in my community over on that podcast. And one of the things that she said that I'd like to reiterate here is that actually talking about it is shining a light on it, and it actually diminishes the power of it. So when we leave it in darkness and when we don't talk about it, that's when it is more likely to grow. It is actually such a beautiful and important topic to be able to bring into the light, to diminish its power, so that we can all be a lifeline to each other. And in the spirit of that, if you personally listening are in crisis, if you are having suicidal ideations or negative thoughts, or maybe you aren't ready to even put any kind of label on it, but you feel that you are in crisis and you're seeking answers, you feel like you're facing unsolvable problems, I want you to know that 988 is a 24-hour free and confidential support. It's the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, and it is there to support anyone in distress. It is prevention and crisis resources for you or for your loved ones, and it includes best practices for professionals in the United States as well. 8 is that line, and Susie's recommendation, and I love this, is to make sure that number is somewhere prevalent for you, somewhere easy, somewhere a quick and easy reminder. Put it in your office. Especially if you have a team, if you have a location that your team works out of, make sure that information is accessible. And even for kids, putting it on, especially as they become teenagers, they have cell phones, putting it on like stuffed animals, posters, things like that can be really helpful, just to make sure it's accessible in moments of crisis. It's also something you can text, which I was happy to learn as well. So text or call takes the kind of pressure of making a phone call off as well if you need to. So I want to make sure that resources out there and available to you. And we'll definitely link more information and resources in the show notes. And of course, we're going to put Dee's information and links in the show notes, because of course you want to connect with her. Obviously, she is extremely knowledgeable and talented and has a lot to offer you. And Dee, I have one more question for you, which is that I like to end all of these conversations with something fun, which is, what is something that's
Wait. Can I interrupt you
fun?
for a second? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
As you're talking, a thought came to mind that I wanted to share, and I don't want to end on that note. So can I just share this, and then you can?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I think too, it's important to just remind everybody that by the time you have suicidal ideations, it's because you're experiencing something, right? And we may be, due to stigma, fear, or whatever, not necessarily want to call someone or text someone like, hey, I'm considering doing X to myself. Don't talk about that. Talk about what's causing it. And even if you're reaching out to family or loved ones, the problem is the problem. It's just that suicidal ideations are coming up as a possible result for someone in that moment. So when you want to have the conversation, talk about the problem, because then that solves that possible result. It now gives you 10,000 more that you can explore before that's even one option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any problem that feels unsolvable, there is another solution out there. That is not the only option. There is another solution out there. And sometimes it takes somebody else to help you explore what other options can look like. And it's common, and it happens to a lot of us. And that's why there are resources available, and also why community is so important, a community that you can trust and rely on. But even if you feel alone, those resources are available there for you. So yeah, thank you for saying that. Okay, so I like to end all of these conversations on something fun, which is, what is something that is making you happy right now? It can be work related, but it does not have to be.
One, thank God I have a couple of things I can mention. I'm just trying to figure out which one. Hallelujah. Thank you, life. Something that made me happy today. I'm going to go something because just in general, there's too many things to mention, and I'm forever grateful for that. Something that made me happy today is I showed up for myself in my business in a way that caught me off guard. Caught me off guard. I have a long-standing relationship with someone. They offered me a project, and I looked at the contract. It was an easy yes until I looked at the contract, right? And old me would have rationalized why it's a risk worth taking. But then for a second, I was like, okay, take your feelings out of this. You are now the CEO of this company. Is this a wise decision to make for your business long term? And the answer was no. So because the answer was no, I then had to advocate for myself. I have not received a response. It would be so funny if I share this podcast and then they hear this before they send me the response. What's gonna happen? But yeah, so what I'm sharing right now is me auditing my actions. But in the moment, it all just happened automatically that I read it and it was an immediate no. And then I drafted up a response and I sent it. And once I sent it, I was like, wait, what did you just do? And then it was like, I read in the little movie and I was like, go you, good job. So yeah, that's one thing that made me happy today. I showed up for my business in a way that I did not expect, but I'm very proud of. And sometimes you have to be okay with disappointing people that you like. And today I made myself very okay with that. So I'm
One of
very
my
happy about that.
friends says all the time, and she probably got it from like a Glennon Doyle or a Brene Brown, but I don't know who it originated from, so I cannot attribute it. But my friend
Yeah.
says all the time, disappoint others before you disappoint yourself. And I think that shows up here for you. Sometimes you're going to disappoint people you like, but you looked at what is best for you as the CEO of this company. I love that for you.
What's best for me as an individual would have been to say yes and get that money. But I had to make, and it almost ties into the conversation we are having early on. I had to separate myself from my business
Yeah.
and say what works best for you right now, short term, is just closing this contract and calling it a day. Because that's X amount of dollars in your bank account, you keep it moving. But for your business long term, this keeps you locked in a situation that is actually going to be harmful long term. So it's not the best decision to make right now.
Mm.
So I'm super grateful that I was able to, that part of my brain switched on and handled that situation the way that it did. Because old me, if I had been in this situation 5 years ago, I would have said yes. I would have signed the contract and be like, yeah, it's okay, we'll figure it out. But now that I'm wiser, now that I'm wiser and I'm older and I have a better idea of how I want to show up as a leader for myself and for my business that I'm building and my dream, we did a good job today.
Yay. I'm so glad for you for that. So, one of the things that has recently happened, shifted, changed in my life is that my middle step uh, adult step kid, but he's 22, just recently temporarily moved back home with us. And I'm not happy for the circumstances as to why, because of course I want him to just like thrive and spread his wings and have his best possible life, which would not include moving back home with his parents, even temporarily. However, I already am just so thrilled at how much more of him I've gotten in the past week since he's been home.
Uh,
And parenting adult kids is such a weird thing because the better that they're thriving, the less you have of them, right? When they're adults, they come to you more when they need you and less speak to say, look how good I'm doing. It's nice to have a little bit extra him in our lives. So
oh,
right now. So I actually am just so glad that he's here. And I think of course there was part of me that like I was enjoying the empty nest. I will not lie about this. I would tell this to his face, but like I really enjoyed it being just me and his dad. However, gosh, I've loved having him here. I've loved seeing his face every day. And I've loved just the extra really good conversations, really deep, big, meaningful conversations. He's had a big step in his life and figuring out who he wants to be and what he wants in this world. And so lots of good conversations about that. And I'm just so grateful that I have the space and the resources to offer him while he's in this place. And also so honored to be trusted with everything that he's chosen to share with us and explore with us. So as much as he's going through a hard time, so that doesn't immediately come to mind as this is a thing that's making me happy, because of
yeah, yeah.
course I want him to be just his happiest, healthiest version of himself. I also, yeah, when you mentioned gratitude, it's man, that's an easy one. That's an easy place to jump to is I am feeling so much gratitude for this opportunity to be a part of his life in this way in this moment. So that's
Look, I
mine.
I can tell you as someone that lost their parents as a teenager and migrated to a whole different continent altogether, the one thing I miss the most is being able to just show up at my grandma's house and just curl up in her bed. That's like one of the most soothing things you can ever experience as a child. So when you were talking about the story with you and your stepson, I'm like, it's you guys are both such a blessing to each other right now. You as the adults and the parents in the situation, you get to have this no longer little, but this little human of yours back in
Yeah.
your space, and they trust and feel comfort so much in you guys that they came home when they were not okay. So that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, yeah. And what a treasure and an honor in anybody's life to be a safe
Yeah.
harbor for them, and especially for your kid. Like that's a big one. So that's mine.
Yeah.
And I really loved this conversation. I thought this was so fun. You're definitely going to have to come back. We'll talk
Oh,
about all
absolutely.
kinds of more things. So, as pretty much as soon as we get off of here, I'm going to send you a link to go ahead and schedule in a couple of weeks. We can do it again. Actually, because you live close to me, we should do one in person. That's what we should do. But
I'm down.
I will send you something and we'll
Yeah,
figure it out. But thank you
I'm
so
totally
much for
down.
being here. And to reiterate to the person listening, you are not alone. And I'm so glad that you're here. And my DMs are always open to chat about all the things going on in your life as a whole person, but especially as a fellow person who understands from a business leadership perspective. Get it? Happy to chat with anybody listening. And I'm sure Dee is feels the same. So connect with
Absolutely.
us. That's what we
Absolutely.
want.
I've legit toyed around with creating like a community for entrepreneurs. I'm going to start with women first because sometimes when we add other genders to the room, it gets a little crazy and chaotic. At least for me, I get overwhelmed. But like starting up with just a circle of women that are entrepreneurs that are like, if you're feeling isolated, girl, let's come into this chat. Let's talk about cycle syncing. Let's talk about how to like plan your day around your cycles so you are not being unnecessarily stressed out by your hormones fluctuating and your energy levels going out of whack. But yeah, these are all the things that I would love to have a circle of women that are also entrepreneurs talk about. So I'll add that to the list of things that I want to create in 2025.
Yeah, I
Because
love that.
this
Sign
list
me up.
actually maybe before 2025. The list just keeps growing. I
Yeah.
honestly I would like to I'd love to help create spaces where people can connect as human beings because yeah, ultimately that's all the other stuff that we do is razzle dazzle.
Yeah. So
The
to you
human experience
listening,
is
you're
a
not
thing.
alone. You can sit with us. We want to be
Yes.
friends. And the world is a better place with you in it. We're so glad that you're here. So thank you for being here today. Hopefully, I'll see you right here, same place, same time next week. Okay.
All
Talk to
right.
you
Bye,
soon. Bye.
everybody.